Hello class, my name is Paola Aguinaga and I will be presenting on Parkinson's disease. Each year, it is estimated that 60,000 Americans are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Learning about the physiology, risk factors, and genetic predisposition for this condition can help us reduce the risk of developing it or help us better assist people who are affected by Parkinson's. Primary Parkinsonism, paralysis agitans, and idiopathic Parkinsonism are the common scientific names for Parkinson's disease. This condition affects the central nervous system, which is made up of the brain and spinal cord. This organ system is responsible for movement, emotions, anatomic functions. The retina, olfactory epithelium, olfactory nerves, and optic nerves can be considered part of this organ system. Identifying the organ system that is affected by a disease can help us better understand the symptoms patients experience. In order to carry out conscious and non-conscious functions, the body must maintain internal conditions. Homeostasis is maintained by cells that rely on clearance mechanisms to adequately respond to changes in physiological and pathological conditions. Protein shape is essential to function, and when proteins cannot be properly reshaped by molecules, proteolytic systems are responsible for destroying them. The effectiveness of these symptoms are compromised in patients with Parkinson's. Cases of Parkinson's disease result from the reduced ability to maintain homeostasis, leading to the buildup of clusters of proteins. The patient's reduced ability to regulate internal conditions cause several complications and symptoms. This condition is characterized by the death of cells in the central nervous system because of the inability to maintain homeostasis. Parkinson's disease is a neurodegenerative disorder. Damage in the substantia nigra due to the presence of alpha-synuclein has been linked to this disorder. Alpha-synuclein is a protein that is toxic and causes the death of neurons in this part of the brain, which cannot be replaced. The nerve cells of the substantia nigra are responsible for generating dopamine and transmitting messages regarding body movement. When these nerve cells die and the levels of dopamine in the brain are reduced to 30%, patients begin to show movement symptoms. Movement symptoms are a result of insufficient dopamine needed to communicate messages. The messages that are transmitted using dopamine require ganglia. Ganglia execute movement by acting as paths made of neurons that signal movement. Inadequate stimulation of dopamine receptors in the striatum causes the subthalamic nucleus to be overstimulated and the globus pallidus interna to be understimulated. These effects are responsible for stiffness. Additionally, patients experience tremors when the globus pallidus interna is overstimulated. The effects this condition has on the patient's physiology and anatomy cause the symptoms experienced by them. Changes to a person's handwriting can also be a sign, specifically if the patient's writing is remarkably smaller. Hyposmia or lessened ability to smell can also signal the early stages of this disease. Trouble sleeping, moving, or walking are also early signs. Facial masking is the term used to describe the rigidity or lateness of facial expressions in patients. Fainting or feeling dizzy is a result of drops in blood pressure related to this neurodegenerative disorder. Patients with Parkinson's disease experience movement symptoms including bradykinesia, tremor, stiffness, and postural instability. Excessive muscle tone is hypertonia, and excessive reflex reaction is hyperflexia. Symptoms of hypertonia, hyperflexia, and muscle stiffness are observed in patients with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease weakens balance and coordination. People are affected differently by this condition, and the development of symptoms varies. Some experience depression or emotional alterations, trouble swallowing, chewing, and talking. Urinary problems, constipation, and sleep disturbances are also symptoms. The symptoms of this condition can be treated by medication. However, treatment options for Parkinson's disease are limited. There is currently no cure for this disease because the neurons that die in the brain of patients cannot be replaced. Levodopa, dopamine agonist, MAOB inhibitors, and amantadine are medications that are used to treat movement-related symptoms. Dopamine antagonists are used to treat this disorder by elevating the levels of the substance that forms dopamine in the brain. The cells that remain in the substantia nigra make more dopamine and have higher impact. Genetics can increase the risk of developing this disease. However, Parkinson's disease is rarely inherited. Most cases of Parkinson's disease are considered sporadic, meaning that the patient has no family history of this disorder. However, the genetic alterations of the LRRK2 or SNCA gene can be inherited by a person from one parent. If a single copy of a gene is affected, the patient will develop the condition. If there is a genetic alteration in the PARK7, PINK1, or PRKN gene, then two genes in the cell of patients are affected. In these cases, both parents carry a single mutation and are not affected by the condition. PARK2 produces a protein parkin. The SNCA gene is responsible for the production of alpha-acylin protein. PARK7 produces protein that defends against mitochondrial stress. PINK1 also does the same thing as PARK7, and LRRK2 produces proteins. Genetics are not the only risk factors linked with developing this condition. Genetic susceptibility and environmental factors are associated with the development of this disease. Exposure to pesticides and toxins are environmental factors that could increase the risk of developing this condition. Although cases of Parkinson's disease are sporadic, people with a parent, sibling, or child with this condition are at higher risk of developing it. Early onset Parkinson's disease that is developed before the age 40 has been linked to mutations in the PRKN gene. In a few cases, this mutation causes late onset Parkinson's disease. A history of traumatic brain injury could also potentially increase the risk of developing this condition. Men are 1.5 times more likely to develop this condition. To know if you or a loved one has this condition, the expert opinion of a neurologist is required for a diagnosis. This disease is diagnosed by a neurologist. This expert will review the medical history, any symptoms the patient has experienced or is experiencing, and conduct a physical and neurological examination. A neurological exam is used to assess the patient's nervous system. The neurologist will review the patient's motor and sensory abilities, physiological reactions, nerve function, balance, coordination, and mental status. Learning about the life choices that can reduce the risk of developing Parkinson's can help us improve our health in later stages of life. One cannot prevent this disease, however, we can reduce the risk of developing it. Reducing the use of pesticides, herbicides, and chemicals with toxins can reduce the risk of Parkinson's. Taking extra steps to protect the head during contact sports can reduce the risk of head traumas, and seeking proper medical treatment when a person does experience a head injury is also very, very important. Exercising regularly can assist in maintaining the proper levels of dopamine in the brain. My maternal grandmother developed Parkinson's disease, and her condition impacted many aspects of her life. My grandmother's battle with this disease made me want to research and better understand what she was going through until she sadly passed away. Parkinson's disease affects the lives of many people and can cause life-changing symptoms. The central nervous system of patients is affected by this condition, resulting in a reduced ability to maintain homeostasis and keep cells in the central nervous system alive. Symptoms develop because of the changes caused by this condition to the brain. The current medical treatment that exists for Parkinson's disease can only treat the movement-related symptoms experienced by patients. Since there is currently no cure for this disease, it's very important to understand the risk factors associated with it and how we can reduce the risk of developing it. Thank you so much.